Hello, my name's Roisin and I am so excited for autumn. Hello friends, so welcome back. Today I have some more book recommendations for you, and this time they are seasonal themed. I love all things seasonal. I love when things fit with a theme. So as you can see, I've tried to theme my setup for today. I've got this blanket as well, but you can't see it, but it is nice and cozy down here. There are some books that really just feel like autumn for me, and since I know some of you love to read different things for different seasons, I thought I would give you some of my recommendations. When I was planning this video, I wrote down just a list of books that I thought felt like autumn, and then I was trying to organise them into categories, and the 4 categories that I ended up coming up with were whimsical, historical, murder and non-fiction. So we will start with the whimsy. The first one on my list is one that I read in August, and that is The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherynne M. Valente. This is a middle grade novel about a girl called September, which is appropriate for autumn, who is ravished and taken away to the fairy kingdom where she goes on an adventure. It is a beautifully written novel where the writing is just as lush and full of references and imbued with the spirit of fairy tales. It is incredibly whimsical and about kindness, and it is one of those books that is so very visual that you can clearly imagine it. I know a lot of people like to read middle grade and children's books in order to be cozy, and this is definitely one for that sort of a situation. The next one on my list is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, which I guess some people might think of as a winter read because it is set in northern Russia, and it is a very, very snowy book. But for me, it is that sense of whimsy and the crackling near magic that makes me feel like it is great for autumn time, because of course Halloween is magical, but also there is something about the turn in the weather that makes me feel like something more magical is just about to happen, is a sense of anticipation, and I think that The Bear and the Nightingale has that sense in it. It is about a young girl in Russia in the medieval period whose father remarries and brings home a woman who is incredibly religious, but who can see the spirits and the sprites of the old religion, and the girl can see them too, but no one else in their family can, and she ends up finding out that she has to save her family. It is a very, very cozy read again, and one that is incredibly atmospheric. Next is another children's book, and that is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I read this book a lot as a child, and I also saw the film regularly, and it definitely holds a sense of nostalgia for me, which I think is also something that is great for this season. But alongside that, it is set in a gothic stately home in Yorkshire, so you're on the moors and you have the misty foggy mornings, recalling to mind the Bronte sisters, who may or may not be appearing on this list later on. And it is the sort of story about discovering who you are, and very much so about gardens and nature and the beauty and magic that nature can bring into your life. I definitely feel like autumn is a time when I think more about nature than at other times of the year, just noticing the change in the weather and in the leaves. And then the final whimsical one is kind of on a more melancholy end of whimsy, and that is The Time Traveller's Wife by Audrey Niffenegar. This book is one that is incredibly popular, but the film is no good, so I wouldn't bother with it. It is a love story about a man who has a genetic condition that means that he suddenly time travels to different parts of his timeline. He can't control it. He just will suddenly disappear and end up in a different part of his timeline. And there is a girl that he meets and falls in love with. She meets him when she is 6 years old and he is a grown adult. He meets her when she is 20 and he is 28. And so it's about their relationship and how they move through the world whilst he is constantly disappearing, and also while she knows more about him than he does. This one is also so beautifully written and immersive. Audrey Niffenegar was an artist who worked with paper before she wrote this novel, and the main character Claire is also an artist who works with paper, and the beauty of her descriptions of that artwork is incredible, and I love the atmosphere, and I love the sense of longing and of two people who are constantly missing each other. It is a very sad, very beautiful love story with the sort of melancholy that I like to put myself in on a cozy warm day when I'm curled up in my chair at home. The next category is history. I like to read historical fiction all year round, but I definitely think when the nights are drawing in, it is nice to escape to some other time as well as some other place. So the first one I've put on my list because it's kind of crossing the border between whimsy and history, and that is The Island Child by Molly Aitken, which I read also in August. This book is set in Ireland in the mid-20th century and also in Canada 20 years after the part that's set in Ireland, and it is about a remote rural community who live on an island in the Atlantic Ocean off the west coast of Ireland. I really love books that are set in isolated communities and that have an element of it's difficult to live here, and that makes the people and the culture what it is. This book uses elements of Irish folklore, elements of selkies and fairies, and the border between Catholicism and traditional older Irish superstitions and folklore, and how they combine. And also it talks about gender in Ireland and the treatment of women, and it talks about PTSD and trauma. It is a heavy book, but with a beautiful, whimsical, atmospheric writing style, and some very strong characters. The next one I literally just finished and then decided to add just before I started filming, and that is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. So this is set in the 1590s, and it is the story of Hamnet, the son of William Shakespeare, who died when he was 11 years old. And it is the story of his family and the story of his death. It is a very small story. It is very contained to this family and this one little boy and the effects of that, because although it is ostensibly about Shakespeare, his name is never mentioned, and it is not about the big, the entire, the universe of Shakespeare. It is about the small, what Shakespeare is in a nutshell. And it is so beautifully written. It is so poignant and moving. It is has some of the best descriptions, and I cried at the end. And that sort of slightly magical element of it also makes it feel really appropriate for this time, as well as the cover. Look, at it, it's got like owls and hares and berries. It's very much an autumnal cover. I can't mention historical fiction without mentioning Wolf Hall. Yes, this is Bring Up the Bodies. I don't own a physical copy of Wolf Hall, but you get the gist. You know what it represents. It's incredible. I have a review that you should check out if you want to hear me rave about this for 12 minutes. It is my favourite series of all time, and it is atmospheric, spooky, about ghosts, set in stately homes. It is creepy. It is the sort of thing that feels like it's in a mist. It's about the mists of time. It has incredibly strong characters and beautiful writing. I'm not going to go on about it because I go on about it all the time. So the next historical fiction I want to talk about is The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry, another one I regularly mention, but one that is about a woman whose husband has just died, and she is obsessed with Mary Anning, the female scientist who discovered fossils in Dorset, and she hears the story of a serpent that is terrorising the Essex coast and decides to take her maid and her son and go to Essex to see what is going on and see if she can make a scientific discovery. This is at the time in the Victorian period where the border between science and folklore was really narrow, because they were discovering dinosaurs existed, but they didn't know if that meant that possibly other mythical magical creatures existed, like dragons and giant sea snakes. And so it has that element of magic, even though it is not a book with magic in it. It is also one that is set in Essex, and is very much of that landscape, of that estuary landscape, the flat lands and the fogs and the mud. It is about passion and uses nature in the same way that the Romantic poets would have used nature to talk about human feeling in a pathetic fallacy kind of a way. It is passionate, it is powerful, it is atmospheric, which I think must be the theme of this video. Another passionate, powerful and atmospheric book is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I told you the Brontes were going to come up later. And this, much like The Secret Garden, is set in Yorkshire, on the moors, about some passionate characters who are terrible to each other. It is a story within a story. It starts with a man who is renting a room, and he finds out from his maid a story about his landlord and their past, and it is a story of cruelty and passion and racism and gender roles and class. There's a lot going on, but why I think it is perfect read for autumn is because of those misty moors. This time of year is when I love to go walking and strap on my boots and go into nature. The ability to do the same thing within books, to feel like I'm strapping on my boots and heading out into the mist, is one of the things that makes me want to read a book at this time of year, and is the thing that I think Wuthering Heights has going for it. Don't go into it expecting to want Cathy and Heathcliff to be together as a romance. Go into it expecting to fall in love with the Yorkshire moors. Next is a very little category, but one that I know people love to read, especially in October, and that is murder. It's a brilliant category. If you love a cosy mystery, please let me know in the comments down below what is your favourite one. I would love to hear from you, because I can definitely see myself cozying up with one and some tea or hot chocolate later on in the year. I'm not sure what it is about murder that makes us feel so cosy and comforted, but I definitely know that I feel that way. So, but not with a thriller. This is specifically with something warm and cozy, and for that I have chosen the A.B.C. Murders by Agatha Christie. I recently did a 6 weeks, 6 genres challenge where I read a different genre every week for 6 weeks, and I did a cozy mystery one, and this I read during that. So I'll leave the vlog up there if you want to go and check it out. Agatha Christie is the queen of crime, and so maybe it is her I should go to next. A.B.C. Murders is an Hercule Poirot story when he receives a note telling him that someone is going to murder someone whose name begins with an A who lives in Andover, and they have the ABC train timetable left near the body. And then it moves on to someone whose name begins with B who lives in a place that begins with B, and then C in a place that begins with C, and so on. And Hercule Poirot is to find out what is going on. It is silly and camp and fun. I definitely think it is one for this time of the year, and again it bridges the gap because it is also almost historical, being set in the 1930s. For a murder that is a bit more full of the atmospheric, and to fill your greatest dark academia dream, and that is The Secret History by Donna Tart. Although I'm sure if you are into the dark academia aesthetic, you will already have read this book because it is everywhere. But it is a campus novel, so this time of year of back to school, especially for those of you who are at university and unable to go back to school, maybe The Secret History, a campus novel, will be right up your street. It is about a group of pretentious, elite Greek students at a small liberal arts college in New England, and at the beginning of the book we know that one member of this group has been murdered by the rest of them, but we don't know why or how or what happened. It is an exploration of obsession, of arrogance, of wanting to be part of something and to belong, of pretension, and it is incredibly beautifully written, incredibly atmospheric. The boy lives in an abandoned warehouse with broken windows in a New England winter, and you can just feel the cold creeping into your bones. And it also has the Gothic element. Finally, we have non-fiction. There are 2 types of non-fiction I have here. One is Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which is a book to help you spark your own creativity. It is advice for people who want to be creative, on how to be creative, but it is very much a almost self-help, kind of a spiritual look at it, rather than a very practical, hands-on look at it. So it's not for everyone, but I really like the way it explored the idea of creativity and giving yourself permission to create, not being afraid, and feeling that spark within yourself. At this time of year when we're spending more time in our houses, particularly with the pandemic, but also with the change in the weather, it can be a good time to hunker down and start creating. And then finally is Underland by Robert MacFarlane, one of the most beautifully written books I've ever read. But it is non-fiction, which is not what I usually expect. It is about all of the buried places in the world, the caves, the graves, the underground passages that humans have created, explored, utilised, and our connection with the underworld, with it as a liminal space, a space in between the above and the beyond. It is so atmospheric and beautiful, but also incredibly informative. Nature writing is something that I really want to read more of, especially at this time of year, as I mentioned earlier. So if you have any recommendations for your favourite beautifully written nature writing, I would love to hear in the comments down below, particularly if it's to do with the British countryside, because I've really been getting into exploring that this year. So that is all of the books that I would recommend you read this autumn, if you've got time and space in your TBR. Please let me know in the comments below what type of books you love to read in autumn, and if you have any recommendations for me, because I would love to hear them. Thank you for watching. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. I would really appreciate that. And to subscribe, because I put out new videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. So I will see you again soon. Bye bye!